Hello, very good evening everyone. Ngasi se kitang change of plan leire. Geography to ram gad makha chatha gad do ngasi Indian economy oina tawrani ko. Geography se give me some time. Magi PDF adi ki picture mayam do tasel laga slide ki form do ina taklakani. For now we'll be doing with Indian economy ko. Ngasi Indian economy di kan hause. Indian economy se sorry syllabus to UPSC syllabus MPSC syllabus to habitang pabiro. We will deal with this later on ko ahambada koni Indian economy how vacancy is the first we have to understand what is economics hay se kari no na ahambada kangmina se heta so economy se kam kari ke hore no why does economy started as a discipline ko or why does economics started as a discipline ko okay akoina si sa khangba matam the first akoi ki wants adagi and needs ti kari no na kamina si human ki perspective to ne ko human ki wants kari no ti needs na kari no ise needs is na hamada needs han tok si essential for survival ko this is not essential for survival ko needs na kai no for example we need air water to drink air to breathe water to drink and shelter to live so this is needs okay and then wants are things you want which are not required for the survival okay these are like iPhones Rolex ki watch si yaw draga so hingbadi yai ko but these are wants that you have nangi apamani sina essential needs are essential these are the basic things most basic things which are required for the survival of human beings okay masi leire si se economics se kari hori no kan human ki wants and needs se human ki wants and needs this is infinite loi banai de ko pen banai de ko ise asa you wants and needs infinite oi banna si se fulfill to wom changi ko we need to fulfill this we need to produce certain things okay and to produce this goods and services ko goods and services to produce these goods and services we need resources okay resources changi ko so what is these resources resources are nothing but tools to produce goods and services ko what are these tools and services tools to produce goods and services masi karino has a convenience here see say now first we need land am changi ko and then we need labor and then we need capital and then entrepreneurship or entrepreneurs changi ko entrepreneurs changi okay lane sina kaino akoina for example akoina cheng puthok ke haiba matamda akoi lau changi ko we need paddy fields and paddy field later and then we need labor thaba hunba amadi kainogi magi lokpada akoi mi changi ko this is labor land se rice puthokpa matamda basic example ni ko paddy or rice puthokpa matamda land changi labor changi and then we need capital what is this capital this is machinery and others ko machinery such as akoi gi tractor gumba tractor changro low uba matamda. Here capital, and then at last we need entrepreneurs. We need someone to organize all these three components and to work upon to produce rice ko. Sida ako human. Basically they are human na to entrepreneurs ko. They organize this land, labor, capital, and then they produce certain goods and services. This is sige example sa ako'y anything ako'y itong PBI phone produce tong matam da land am chang building am changi ako'y factory am changi ko, and then there we need skilled labor to produce certain parts of the mobile phones, and then we need capital machineries to produce their things, and then we need entrepreneurs to plan the production company ama or factory ama do plan to bom changi ko. This is in economics. These tools we call them as factors of production. Factors of production, or in simple term, this is resource. Okay, masilay here. Ako economics se kari gilay no hay consider resource, factors of production or resource. This is scarce. Yam late ko. This is scarce. There is scarcity of resources. Okay. Resources scarce way, limited way. This is why economics emerged as a discipline to address this issue ko. Here we will be dealing with this a little more in detail ko. Okay na? Masida isida. Pen kitang chawon kay ko. Here, okay. Ako'y infinite wants and needs later. Masi later, and then what problem do we face? Limited factors of production. Machine is this needs to be addressed. And how do we address this in economics? Here we understand masigi issues the infinite wants and needs ka limited resources to ga masigi relation da this gap. There are certain things. Scarcity later. Scarcity later ni nakadore. Scarcity later ni choice we need to make choice. As the factors of production, as the resources are limited, we need to make a choice. We need to give up certain things. From this concept, there's a very opportunity cost. There's a very important concept in economics which is known as opportunity cost. What is this opportunity cost? Opportunity cost is the next best alternative foregone. Masi kayo no, I consider. For example, nawanda lupa chama lay. Lupa chama sina nawanda masi scarce unele. Lupa chama kata lay nawanda. Then you have certain choices ko. You are hungry nang chaklame ko. Then, but you also need to buy certain pen ko. Pen na malay wagi nang dakar lay. That lupa chama do na nang either pen do lay ba natraga na chak chaba or anything. You eat something. That is choice ko. Choice ani lay. And then there may be other choice. You may buy a notebook ko. Sige choice. This choice. Okay, here. When nangi 100 rupees lay. Masida is that you either buy food or you buy a pen, you buy a notebook. So okay, you made up a choice. You are very hungry. Nang yam chak lamban maramoiraga. Chak ring sa lupa chama duna. What is the opportunity cost? Your opportunity cost is either the pen or the notebook. You need the pen more than the notebook ko. Pen do na hinadakar lay. So this is the opportunity cost. What you bought, nasay dang na chak raga, there is an opportunity cost. Nang na kolom leiramba yabado adubu nang chak chakramnina leibagi nangonda ngasagi opportunity do leitre. That is known as opportunity cost. Opportunity cost is very important because in economics, opportunity cost is will be used everywhere. Opportunity cost everywhere laigani nang na. Either there will be when you make certain choices or anything in life in economics, opportunity cost would be everywhere, and this is very very important. Masi leire opportunity cost am leigre. Adaidi kari kari muk change kansita scarce resources hoibanina efficiency da kar leiko. Efficiency da su akoigi ani tholokani productive and then allocative efficiency ko ani thonglakani. I'll explain this. And then we need sustainability. Sustainable oibam changi ko since they are resource akoi scarce oibanina. And then sorry, we also need rationing. Rationing is in kaino kakthaba. For example, now on the ching kg manga le ko manga sida nangna nogi family member mari sida yen thok loi pi ga dabane ko, but nasaki mi amada nang cheng kg mari pi ga dabane asengbati. For example, for a day, let's take it this way, ni amana no mada kg mari chang en khalasi, but you only have 4 kg of rice, which is an example of scarcity. So what you do is you ration the needs of the people and then you distribute 1 kg each. Kg amama moine yen bato madu akoina rationing to one kan ko akoina ration card. Have you ever heard of this term, ration card? And taramani card adum pioneer man ching and mamatang da. This is ration concept of rationing ko. Rationing to wom changi. Okay, what is efficiency? Asi khangasi. Productive efficiency is in a kaino. Allocative efficiency is in a kaino is. I'll make this very fast. For example, now on the 10 acre of land lay 10 acres sida akoina ching thaba matamda pedi thaba matamda we can produce 10 bags of pedi ko 10 bags of pedi putokpa yai. And then at the same place masai ki 10 acre duda akoina kobi thaba se cabbage thaba matamda this also produces 5 kgs ko. For example, akoina case ama study togsi case is the highest. There's a village nang se farmer mo oini, you are a farmer, okay. And then akoina nangi farmer mo oiraga nangi family da changi ba cheng se 10 kg 10 bags of pedi changi ko for 1 month or 1 year has. And then you need 2 kg of cabbage kobi kg ni changi ko. This is just a case example ko. For example, nang na farmer mo re nang na 10 acre do da 10 bags of rice thare ko. Rice nga to thare 10 bags putwe. Here, what is this 10 bags of case 1 do ko. This is case 1. This is case 1. Case 1 da nang 10 bags of pedi putwe. You are short of 2 kg of cabbage. You need to outsource this from somewhere else, from another farmer ko. Here, are you productively efficient? Productively efficient, oi bro. Yes, you are productively efficient with the oi ko. But you are allocatively not efficient. Yan tabo si bro. Kay gumba nang na 10 acres da 8 acre da pedi thare almai taroga 2 acre du na akoi cabbage thare. This situation is ngasai here it's still efficient, productively efficient, allocatively efficient. But not at the full potential ko. Like this, productive efficient and allocative efficient hai C later. Okay, are you getting my point? You need to be efficient both productively and allocatively. Okay, here I made ngako. As I see say, let's make some changes. Kiji nipan, si beg nipan chang halasi ko. And then here, beg nipan kak changam ni nga sai si beg nipan putoi. And then 2 kg. Ani mag nangi fulfill tawre ko. This is both productively efficient and then allocatively efficient. This condition. Okay. Masi later and then akhoi term khara khamina si sustainable. What is this sustainable? Sustainability or sustainable? What is this? Sustainability is the factor of production layer. This is resource ko. Masi akhoi na certain produced goods and services produced over matamda needs for future generation is not compromised. Tungi future generation ki resource to the sohan ragati, that's called sustainable. We'll get to know this a little better in another language and another example ko. Masi say over time the quantity and quality of factors of production or resource is not compromised by the present use of the resource. Sustainability is again tawsa. Akoina resource am season matamda tungi generation da akoina madu the solga oidaba either quantity in terms of quantity or quality the effect of 100 that's called sustainable use of resource ko. I think you already got this. Okay, and then we'll know a very important term, growth versus development. Growth versus development ko. Basic growth is no. Growth is nothing but, for example, akoy Manipur se chahi amada 1 lakh rupees 1 lakh se akoy ki gross state domestic product and high we produce 1 lakh rupees in 2025. In 2026 we have a growth of rupees 50,000 in the domestic product, gross domestic product or GSDP ko. This is known as growth. We have growth. Ato growth se growth later, for example akhoi gi lising angkai hena puthoe, but akhoi gi masidai se loinamak, for example have all Manipuri akhoi Manipuri loinamak masigi growth se masida kanabra haidi akhoi loimak ki growth laibra. Every individual in Manipur has their income grown in this following year ko. Akhoi Manipur da laiba mi, for example chama lairen khalasi chama sida chapana na income se increase tobra natraga na certain section amakhakta da mi amakhakta da hengat bra lising akai bi amagi income da hengalamaga di yai ko madugi possibility su lai. At the same time there is also a possibility of ngasai ki punna akoy income kitang hengat min na bagi possibility amsu lei ko, but there's a trade off. Ngasai growth yengba matam daista masigi aspect se leite ko. Whereas in development, it's a more broader term. Development then is a broader term where the growth, monetary growth kaktang nataba. For example, other indicators such as education. Masita lupa lisiyang kay sahi mo hengalen income hengalen education pagalam bayay pagalam da bayay health ki infrastructure pagalam da bayay ko. In terms of development, this is a broader concept whereby ki education the pull up point of fagalagadi, with each and everyone is getting an development in education or healthcare facility. This is known as development ko. Okay, masi lere ki masi is the infinite wants and needs later. There is the scarce resource later. Masiday sida na question mari khak hangse ko, how to best utilize these resources. Second na, who decides how these resources will be controlled. And then question number 3 then, in social context, which set of people have the power, and for ideal way to manage this. Masigi question Marisa, which discipline answer this 3 question here? Economics na answer tawiko. Here, polity. And this is sociology. Emergence of discipline to giwari ni ko. This question of scarce resources and infinite wants and needs. Out of this problem ko, there arrive certain discipline. These are the discipline that we are talking about here. Ethics. How to best utilize these resources. This is dealt with by economics. Who decides how these resources will be controlled? This is done by polity. In social context, where the set of these people, which set of people have the power? For example, caste system mayamama karamana hina power pai kind of labor. Madu sociology na answer to wiko. And then last, the ideal way. This is dealt with by ethics. Okay, we are almost complete. The basics of economics. Almost as of now, this is the most basic thing ko. Along the lecture, deal for example, macroeconomics, macroeconomics, adagidi mayamama sida is the external sector of economy, money and banking, adagidi national income accounting, and then microeconomics. Sorry, microeconomics tana production possibility curve, in elasticity of demand and supply, and then price elasticity kind of mama pamakini. As of now, before coming to all this, we have learned certain terms such as sustainability, scarcity, the resources, factors of production, growth and development. Masi mayam se akoina khaminagre Now, the official beginning of our first topic. Ngasi poverty tamgani ko. We'll start with poverty. Okay. Akhoi poverty haise kaino haise. Masi kangminasi ko. Here. Muna tabi ko. Here. Poverty haise. Ahambada akhoi ngasi tamdoise definition. Poverty definition tamgani. And then how it's measured ko. And then India's progress on poverty reduction. See cover talk tabi. Let's first cover the definition and the how it's the measurement of poverty in India ko. Let's see if you can touch this topic. Ahambada definition ko. What is the definition of poverty? You try to answer me. What is poverty is a kind of. You may say lie by say koi paisa leitaba income leitaba dune kaina wakhanda lamgani. It is partly true, but in terms of economics, this is not true ko. Akhoi na poverty yengba matamda poverty ki definition se deprivation of multiple dimensions of well-being. This is the definition in economics ko. What are the different dimensions? It can be health, income ko, adaidi education, okay, and then good government, sense of security, and then social relation, and then also clean environment. Masi mayam se either some of the dimensions of this dimension ko. If you are deprived of this certain dimension, of this multiple dimension, you are considered to be poor. Poverty is a deprivation of multiple dimensions of well-being. Okay, this is the definition in economics. Here, akhoi the second World Bank definition. World Bank definition of poverty. World Bank definition se kamai p ke hai consider pronounce deprivation in well-being compromising various dimension. Cosisina, this is the definition. Okay, various dimensions ko. Ahambada akhoi inability to acquire basic goods and services necessary for survival with dignity. First criteria is CPM. This is low income ko. Low income leitrakanda koi si ki basic kano se leiba ngamte ko. Low levels of health and education. This is another dimension ko. And then we also need another. There are certain dimensions. This is taking a lot of time to write. For access to clean water and sanitation. For the inadequate physical sensitivity. Sorry, security hai beko. This is not crime though. Crime society in the crime later this can also be an indicator of you are being poor or deprivation. Lack of voice, this is political. Okay, and then 6, insufficient capacity and opportunity to improve one's life. These are the indicator of these are the dimensions of the World Bank. As per World Bank definition, the poverty is a combined defined consider it's a pronounced definition in well-being and compromising various dimensions inability to acquire basic goods and services necessary for survival with dignity, low levels of health and education, poor access to clean water and sanitation, inadequate physical security, lack of voice, which is political, this relates to crime, insufficient capacity and opportunity to improve one's life. These are the dimensions that World Bank gives. This is a very broad and overarching definition. When global goals are looked upon, definitions are broad, so no risk of exclusion. Any global goal definition say I'm broad overarching. Why is this? Because to exclude exclusion do avoid so that everyone is included, so that no one is left out. The poor is not left out. So this is the definition, which is very broad. Masiki definition say one day the four this is ideal goals. This is the ideal goals. Okay. As I get poverty is a lack of basic necessity of life, difficult to define as it differs from person to person. Okay. Poverty is defined to mayam khadi adum lui because deprivation of multiple dimensions of well-being. So why do we measure poverty? Poverty is the way measure to is a measurement of poverty. The way to is first, identification of poor. Second, to check national progress. Measurement of poverty ki magi purpose sorry anile first identification of poor. Who are poor? Kana no lai to poverty the lai se kana no haibigi identification to bugi, and then to check national progress. How have the country improved from poverty as compared to other years, the past years masigi purpose ni national progress identification kana poor rige, and then we give certain benefits through government policies or schemes. Sige purpose to help the poor get out of poverty through certain government schemes or government policies. Okay, policy making decision that here masida question ama arrive to which one is more important? where do we need to be more accurate? Kadaidana hen accurate oiba darkar leige? Here, obviously here. Masidai, for example, a person X, he is poor, but during the survey, ngasai survey to matam this identification of poor person yengba matam this the person X say he is very poor, but he is not included in the government ngasai data to the massive poor in a so he would be left out of the government scheme, which will affect him a lot. Here in this context ko person X sida yaudraksu kem kaide in the sense there is not much effect because this talks about certain data statistical point of view. For example, India poverty 5.2 ni ka haibase, this may increase to 5.3. This is it. But in this case, person X will be deprived of his basic necessity such as food, grain, so here we need to be more accurate ko to avoid errors ko. Sista sida akoin tamani exclusion error and then inclusion error. Masin is thoan dana ba hitare ne. Asa exclusion error to person X he's a poor, he's out of the poverty data, so he is deprived of his basic need or basic support that the government provide. In inclusion, someone is very rich but he is included in the poor data, so he gets the benefit even though he can afford his food grain. Okay, here it is more important as we know from this. Asai sidagi akona khangba ngame madudi akona identification of poor to matam daista we need the data to be more accurate. Okay. Akona measurement to matam da ko. How do we measure poverty? Measurement to matam da. Here we have to apply a criteria to someone. Side definition to the multiple dimension and higher. So how do we look into this objectively so that we can identify in a more objective manner? As of now, let's keep it this way. Then I'll explain this further. Application criteria se this can be subjective. Or is it, why is this subjective? Because here but the dimension the and then second standard to be chosen. Okay, dimension se karino. What's this dimension? What is this dimension? Karino is dimension can be, for example, health or BI, education or BI. Dimension se akoina first criteria, how to apply criteria to someone ko. Criteria can thambam changi so that we can objectively look upon who is poor and how poor he is ko. Poverty se yeng ba matamda measure to ba matamda criteria ma yengani subjectively akoina yeng makan sida criteria se subjectively yengani ahamada what dimension to be chosen ko. Either it can be health, it can be education, it can be income, anything. For now, let's take health and education. Okay, and then standard to be chosen. This answers the question how. Kamina dimension set. For example, here there is the akoina example when health lower colors. We have taken health to be the dimension. We have chosen a criteria to measure poverty, and health is the first criteria. Okay, health is khal then what standard do we look? Then what standard should we look? Health also akoina khara yeng be ai ko first life expectancy yeng be ai, hospital ki distance from his home ko. Sorry. When a hospital ki distance yang be ko, how far is the hospital from a person, from certain person ko? Okay, here it is. See yang be, and then number of preventable deaths. See standard home yang be ko, but we need to choose something out of this. Okay. Here akoina masi yang be to measure poverty. Masi mayam si yang be. Firstly, we looked upon criteria ko, and then application dana objectively yang doi ni. Objectively here kana kari purpose ki akoina measure to rin wa habeto mutom ta laka doi ni ko objective. Okay, here we have dealt with criteria. The tower dimension and standard to be chosen. Okay. So therefore, what do we do now? We choose the most quantifiable. We choose the most quantifiable dimension. Dimension ko. Why do you quantify loiba dimension number? Choose the one changi ko. How do we choose this dimension ko? Kaya ginawa gadi ko measurement ta quantifiable or gadi this is the will be the most easiest. Okay. And then here, ako na money is the most quantifiable. Money is ting asay gi ako gi health and education sidi subjective way ko kitang quantifiable way why ko, because health can be someone in someone's perspective, someone can be healthy, someone cannot be healthy also. There are many dimensions to this, but in terms of money, this is the most quantifiable dimension, because akoy na money yang mamatam akoy na money yang consider money yang consider three options namde tholi. We'll have three options. What are the three options? First, wealth yang bi, income yang bi, and then consumption expenditure. Most quantifiable akoy gi dimension du yang gre hobjik se. We have picked money to be the most quantifiable dimension. Here we can measure money in terms of wealth, person namagi wealth kam lay, and then income kam lay, and then how his consumption pattern is ko. Ahum gi thong na yang be pasida ne akoy problem khar tholi. Wealth it's not accurate. Nobody gives out accurate information. Kanamta na nangi wealth nangi net worth ka no kan hang ba matam da hang pa matam da kanamta na dum accurately di hire ko either losin ba or yam na haijalak pa ma. This is not accurate. Income sina ka do income da su incorrect way ni. Why? Nobody gives out their income. Ngasai gi in a very ngasai gi chap chana di haidro way ba either he will hamper something. Okay, reporting the problem lakani, because when we ask someone about income, he could hide the income. Okay, and income is also very volatile. You could have 30,000 tolob charambado. You might be suspended and you may earn only 15,000 per month. So the most accurate thing would be consumption expenditure. This is stable and better reporting. Most probably everyone will tell the truth about their consumption expenditure, and from this consumption expenditure we can derive to a certain point that what is the consumption capacity, or what is the income that he can spend out of to buy his basic necessity ko. Masida khangba ngam income sina. Okay, here akoina hojik se income se akoina yengre maduta akoina consumption expenditure would be most accurate. Akoina khangba ngam ko. Here akoina economics sing sina kamai kari kamaina masigi akhoi consumption expenditure se kamaina on ge haba matam dai sida they construct a basket of poverty line ko. What is the basket of poverty line? Basically basket of share money masida sida certain goods and services, food, clothing, adaiti kari haisi food, clothing, and then internet expenditure haisi, or anything, any kind of oibe masida mayam ama thamjilakpa yai. And then there can be housing gumba hapsilakpa yai. This depends upon the economics ko. Economist to naman he will decide what should be in the basket of poverty line ko. And on this basket of poverty line masida is the goods and services mayam se they will be assigned a price, assign a price ama keno tawgani ko, assign a price. For example, food da lupa manga, clothing da lupa manga, housing da lupa yangkai, adagiti internet da lupa tara. Sumaina oirasi lupa tara laire kun yangkai 70 rupees. For example, this is an example, 70 rupees. Mi amana lupa 70 rupees se spend to magadi, then he is not poor, he is below above the poverty line ko. Define ko. We'll get to know this. I'll explain this further ko. Here they will decide a poverty line ko. Poverty line there's a they will derive a poverty line, and that poverty line is 70 rupees ko. So why not define ko economics na, and then on this basis will be measuring the poverty line ko. Example am low poverty line is this is poverty line. This is 1,000 rupees na higher for better calculation ko. 1,000 rupees per month. The most basic thing that are required to fulfill his survival ko. This ngasagi basket to the yauriba basic necessity kaido lupa ama sina tha amada fulfill tawba me hana economics kay sina determine tawre, and then they have drawn a poverty line, and this poverty line is considered to be 1,000 rupees per month. Okay, this is the example. And then what do we do here is we collect the data of every person on the country. For example, number 1 the Mukesh Ambani the crore 2 crores later has to the 1 crore na kano the later kananom the Mr. X the later matang, and then here there's a person who can spend 900 rupees per month, and then matang lakan that last 100 rupees spent to wong no pa ma lay to ni ko mayamama sige list mayamam later ni, and then this line is considered to be poverty line. Those persons who are above this poverty line, they are known as APL, above poverty line, and those who are below this poverty line, who can spend just 900 rupees and then 100 rupees or 800 and for anything below 1000 rupees. This is known as BPL, below poverty line. Masi adum taramani akoi below poverty line BPL card paiba APL card paiba kaina ani adum toina akoina taba kaino duni. I think today you know the difference between what is APL and BPL ko. Si gyan tayo ko. Here akoina country magina kaino se akoina poverty se on mo matamda ahambada how many poor are there masing se kam leige na kamai no on ge have sa head count ratio na hai masina kamai on ge kan sita masida is this number of people take count the number of household ko household masing thirani and then they will produce a head count ratio putok te ni ko head count ratio this is this ngasai si sina this will give us the data about how many poor people are there in the country ko for example ngasai gi sida sigi data se this data sida mi se koi na tara le khale si sida si box mi tara ne ko here 5 natural number 5 with ni ko last person is 5 and here it is 10 mi tara le ba matam da sida akoi na mi manga amana they are above poverty line and then mi manga amna below poverty line. So what would be the head ngasai gi poverty ratio se kya hoide no head count ratio se kya hoide no 50% hoide ni ko since they are 50 ko this would be 50%. Okay masi later and then there is another dimension that we need to look ko masi da isna akoina kari ne ba how many are poor masi tagi phangi se how many are poor head count ratio tagi akoina data phangi se how many people are poor out of the total population masi phangi ko second da adu pu ngasai gi how poor are the poor masi question sina kari kamaina phange how do we derive this is done by akoi depth of poverty ka jo khai ko poverty gap na masi derive tok doni ko how do we know this for example mi manga lere manga sida 6% sida first person sina lupa kano chamapan spend to bangami sida is na last person sida lupa chama khak spend to bangami. So how much money would be required to lift these poor people out of poverty masigi matang da akoi gi yeng masibo ko poverty gap kano haina hai ko how do we count this poverty gap the poverty line ngasai gi sida for example mi manga lere manga sida chama sidagi akoi poverty line da lak gi si gap si kano this would be aiko for example mi home lere A B C they are poor ko this is an masida example ni ko 900 mana 800 mana tama 900 tagi 1000 lak pas magi gap si kano lupa sama ko mana lupa kya lupa chani mana lupa kya lupa chamapan here saya get chama chani chamapan sida lupa chama ma chani ama chamapan ama how much is this 11 12,000 rupees kwa this would be divided by, sorry, not 12,000, 1,200. 1,200 se akoi ki asai gi mi kya no legi to mi ahum ni ko asai gi sigi mi ahum sina ne masi divide tor matung da kaino se 1,200 se divided by 3 kya phange se bo this would be 400 ko 400 is the average poverty gap that we need to out that the amount which is needed to uplift these poor people ko lupa chamri changi ko we would need 400 to uplift these poor people out of poverty. So this is what poverty gap means ko akoi masida sida akoina nasagi squared poverty gap method kaina amati tamakhini madu hayeng tamasi. I think as of today this much would be enough because matam yam kuina changre ko yam sangre lectures